Part 2 of Chapter 11, Missing Manatee. So he's got a skiff. He decided he's going to jump out and he's going to play detective today. He's not going into the open water because that'll discourage him. Like looking for something out there, that's a hard task. So he decided he's going to take it to the back country and really search. I began at the scene of the crime, which was how I'd been thinking of the place where I'd found the manatee. Then I took the first channel that branched off the main river. I kept my speed slow so that I could scan the edges of the mangroves for anything out of the ordinary being mangrove roots and small fish and crabs that shelter beneath them, and the occasional buoy or piece of trash left behind by humans. I worked systematically, following the meandering path of each channel to its end, then turning back to the river and going to the next channel and starting over. It was fun, actually, and I was having a good time exploring all the secret hidden places most people never saw. I spotted snook and redfish and little snappers in the shallow water, and lots of birds, and found a few new fishing spots I'd had never discovered otherwise. Once, I spotted a large dark mass in the mangrove roots and got excited, but it turned out to be a plastic garbage bag. The tide became too low for my boat to navigate the backcountry waters, so I headed for home. I felt frustrated and began to think maybe the police were right not to be spending their time on this. When I reached the house, Meemaw was waiting for me. "Skeeter, your mama has to work late tonight, and she said for us to go ahead and eat without her. I'm thinking we ought to go to that new Chinese restaurant for supper. We can bring some back for her. What do you say?" "Sure," I answered. "Just let me take a quick shower first." On the way to the restaurant, Meemaw talked a mile a minute. "Now, Skeeter, don't be surprised if we're supposed to take off our shoes and sit on the floor to eat. I heard that in China people do that. Or maybe that's in Japan. I wore pants and these sandals slip right off, so I'm ready for anything." "I know," I said. "I'd sample whatever's on the menu, but I've been thinking about it, and I don't believe I can eat anything that's still alive. I don't relish the idea of my food fighting back when I stick a fork in it." "Do you? Although I suppose we'll be using chopsticks." "I hadn't thought of that." "Well, I'll try anything else. Eel, octopus, that soup that they make with bird's nests, even though I heard it has bird saliva in it. Can you imagine? As long as it's not squirming." She paused for a second and asked, "Do you think Grandma's a terrible ninny, Skeeter?" I told Meemaw that I liked my food to be dead too, definitely not alive or even wounded, and said I didn't think that meant we were ninnies. Sounds like Meemaw has not been out too much. At the Golden Moon, no one asked for our shoes, and we were seated at a regular table instead of on the floor, and I thought Meemaw looked a tiny bit disappointed. But she perked right up when we were handed our menus. Meemaw read the first line out loud. "Welcome to the Golden Moon. You are the customer, and the customer is booze." She looked at me, a puzzled expression on her face. We both laughed at the same moment, realizing that someone had typed booze instead of boss, and the customer is booze. Not boss. Customer is boss. Meemaw composed herself and said personally, "I've always been partial to a restaurant where the customer is booze." That set me giggling again, but Meemaw had moved on down the menu. "Can you believe these prices, Skeeter? They're so reasonable," she exclaimed. "We can afford to get anything you like. Oh, look here. It says you can order a combination plate. You can try lots of different foods, just like we wanted to." I scanned the menu to see what she meant. It was pretty cool. There were 4 columns marked A, B, C, D, and if you ordered a combination plate, you could choose one dish from each column. "Let's do that, Skeeter," Meemaw said excitedly. "Yeah," I said. "That way we'll be able to try 8 different things if we share. I'm just going to close my eyes and point and see what I get." "I think I'm going to be a little more scientific," I said. "I'm going to make sure no 2 things I order have any of the same words in them. That way, I'll be sure to get a good variety, right?" "That's just brilliant, Skeeter," Meemaw said, beaming. When we'd both decided what we wanted, I looked over the remaining pages of the menu, pointing to a dish called Happy Family. I said, "This was us," until Mom threw Mac out. Uh-oh. Meemaw sighed. "I don't know what your mom is doing, I'm not sure she does right now. Thinks being apart from your daddy is going to make her happy, but I'm afraid your mama has never had much of a talent for happiness. It's something I don't understand. I thought about it. It was true that Mom always seemed to be thinking about what was wrong or how things could be better. It was as if she couldn't see what was good about our lives. She seemed to think everything that wasn't perfect was Mac's fault. What's going to happen? I was afraid to hear the answer, even as I asked the question. We'll have to wait and see, Skeeter. I know it's hard. We were quiet for a while. Then Meemaw pointed to something on the menu called 10,000 Delights. Tell you what, she said, smiling at me with a hint of mischief in her eyes. Let's order your mama this. That was one thing I really loved about Meemaw. It was impossible for her to stay gloomy for long. I smiled back and said, maybe it'll cheer her up. It's worth a try. The waitress came then to take our orders, and I checked her out. She looked Chinese, but she was wearing an ordinary white shirt and black pants, and I realized I'd expected some sort of costume like the ones I'd seen on National Geographic magazines. After Meemaw placed her order, she asked, "Nothing in there will be squirming, will it?" The waitress looked puzzled. Squirming? I could see that she not only found the word difficult to pronounce, but had no idea what it meant. Meemaw said, squirming. She did a little shimmy with her shoulders and wiggled her fingers in the air. Alive? The waitress looked distressed. Still moving, Meemaw explained. To demonstrate further, she stood up and wiggled her hips and snapped her fingers, making her eyes wide and lively and smiling like crazy. I have to say, she looked alive all right. The waitress, with an expression of alarm on her face, looked at me for help, but I was laughing too hard to say anything. She turned and fled into the back room. Where did she go? And what is so funny? Meemaw said with surprise. Finally, a man came from the back and asked if he could help us. His English was a lot better than the waitress's, and Meemaw's fears of wiggly food were put to rest. When our plates came, we tried gamely to eat with the chopsticks we were given, but we were pretty hopeless. The waitress saw us struggling and then brought us forks. So we were able to chow down. I didn't know what I was eating half the time, but it was all good. And as Meemaw pointed out, definitely dead. That paper you've got to write, Skeeter, what's it about? She asked. A pet peeve. I made a face. Mr. G's idea of a fun assignment. Well, it could be worse, Meemaw said. You've actually got something you're really peeved about. What? I asked. Then, before she answered, I got it. Oh, you mean the manatee. Yeah. Hey, that's not a bad idea. Meemaw looked pleased with herself. Then she asked me what I'd done all day, so I told her about my fruitless search for the manatee's body. She eyed me shrewdly. You gonna give up? She asked. Well, it sort of seems like a waste of time, I said. You have some other big, important plans besides your schoolwork, I mean? No. Well, Meemaw said, it's only Thursday. You've still got a 3-day weekend ahead. That was true. And even though I hadn't found the manatee and didn't really expect to, it had felt good to try, especially since nobody else was doing anything. Meemaw went on, shaking her head. I can't stop wondering who would do such a fool-brained thing. I can't stop wondering either. Might as well do something as sit around and wonder. I expect I'll go back out tomorrow, I said. That's the way, Skeeters, said Meemaw. Stick to it. It's like my singing. She poked her hair modestly. I have a certain amount of talent, Lord knows. He gave it to me himself. But it was hard work and practice that won me that karaoke competition. Nobody ever got anywhere by giving up. Now, bring home your mama's supper, will you? I picked up the carton filled with 10,000 delights, and Meemaw picked up the check. Then she reached for the menu and slipped it into her pocketbook. I'm going to hang this on the refrigerator so I can think about what I'm going to order next time, she said. There are still oodles of things we haven't tried yet. Ooh, think about oodles of things. What does that word mean? Lots of things we haven't tried yet. There were oodles of places I hadn't looked for the manatee too, and I guess I was going to try them all.